Dream of the Red Chamber, Chapter 76.
So, you know that exact moment at a massive family holiday dinner.
Oh, yeah.
The plates have been cleared for what feels like hours.
Yeah.
And you were just sitting there, completely drained.
It's running on empty.
Exactly. Your social battery isn't just low, it is blinking a violently flashing red.
Right.
You're like subtly eyeing the hallway, calculating the exact trajectory needed to slip out the side door without causing a scene.
Yes, the tactical retreat.
Yes.
You're weighing whether you can fake a sudden headache or if you just need to, slowly back into the shadows until nobody notices. You're gone.
But, of course, before you can make your move, the host of the party, maybe it's your mom or an aunt or a grandparent, spots your retreat.
They always do.
Always.
Yeah.
And they suddenly bring out a fresh, steaming pot of coffee, or maybe they drop a giant board game right in the center of the table.
Oh, no.
And they essentially lock the doors with their eyes.
Yeah.
You are not leaving.
Right. The fun will continue until morale improves.
It is the absolute definition of a festive hostage situation.
Yeah. Totally. It is the forced continuation of joy, regardless of the actual physical reality of the people in the room.
It really is. It's such a universal, deeply exhausting experience. And this exact dynamic isn't just a modern phenomenon.
No, not at all. It's been happening for centuries.
Centuries. Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to explore how forced festivity almost always masks a much deeper melancholy.
Mm-hmm.
And how the physical spaces we retreat to, well, how they actually reflect our truest emotional states.
The setting of this chapter is really vital for understanding the psychological weight of the scene.
Right. Set the scene for us.
So we are at a mid-autumn festival feast. It's in the sprawling, incredibly wealthy, aristocratic household, the Gia family.
The ultimate rich family.
Exactly. But there is a distinct shift in the atmosphere here because the men of the family have just left the banquet.
Okay, so the formal part is over.
Right. The formal patriarchal obligations of the holiday are done. This leaves the women of the household, led by the matriarch, Grandmother Gia, to carry on the celebration deep into the night.
And Grandmother Gia is like the undisputed center of gravity for this family.
Oh, absolutely. She dictates the weather in that house.
So she looks around her beautifully decorated tables, right under the light of the harvest moon. But instead of seeing this massive, opulent gathering in front of her, she immediately focuses on the gaps.
Yes. She's essentially taking attendance in her head.
And the math is not working out in her favor.
Not at all. The text highlights those specific absences. Like, two of the younger women, Bao Chai and her sister, they've gone home to celebrate with their own family.
Right.
And two others, Li Wan and Feng Ji, are sick. So they are down 4 key people.
Which is a big hit to the party dynamic.
It is. For Grandmother Gia, the sheer scale of the pavilion they are sitting in suddenly works against her. The space just feels too big for the people left inside it. It feels cold.
And she actually voices this disappointment out loud, doesn't she?
She does.
She sighs right in the middle of the party and says, visible proof that nothing in the world is perfect.
Yeah.
Which is, quite the heavy existential mood killer to drop on your guests while they're trying to celebrate.
Seriously. She is looking backward, reflecting on past years when the household was louder, more chaotic and full to the brim.
She's missing the noise.
Exactly. She is lamenting the fact that even when you finally get the family together for a major reunion, the universe finds a way to introduce decay.
Right. People get sick.
People get sick, people marry and form new allegiances. The idealized, impenetrable family unit she desperately wants to maintain.
It's just slipping through her fingers.
It is proving to be entirely unattainable.
So then Lady Wang, one of the younger women at the table, tries to step in with some pragmatic damage control.
She tries to save the vibe.
Yeah, she attempts to comfort the matriarch by pointing out that their core bloodline, like the immediate family, is actually all together this year.
Right. She's saying, oh, look at the bright side. We have the people who matter most.
But Grandmother Gia's reaction to this perfectly reasonable comfort is fascinating. She doesn't agree with her.
No.
And she doesn't argue with her either. She simply commands the servants to bring out massive cups and fill them to the brim with hot wine.
Yeah, she responds to emotional discomfort with a physical mandate.
Drink.
Exactly. And the text explicitly notes the physical toll this takes. The night is getting late, the dew is falling.
And they're tired.
Everyone's bodies are fatigued. And they have a very low tolerance for alcohol at this hour.
Right.
They are already showing obvious signs of exhaustion, but Grandmother Gia completely overrides their physical reality.
She is basically anchoring them to the table with these giant cups. You can't sneak off to bed if you have a massive goblet of hot wine in your hands that the matriarch just ordered you to drink.
You're trapped.
Right. So I have to wonder about her underlying motive here. Is she genuinely oblivious to the fact that everyone is miserable and tired? Or is she terrified of what actually happens if the party stops?
Oh, it's the latter, without a doubt.
Yeah.
If we look at the structural health of the Gia family in the broader context of the novel, they are in a state of slow, irreversible decline.
The family is falling apart.
Slowly but surely. Grandmother Gia's sheer willpower is practically the only load-bearing pillar holding this fading family together.
Wow.
Her insistence on the big wine cups, on staying up, on this aggressive performance of joy, it's a fight against the dying of the light.
So if she lets the party end,
If she allows the lights to go out and everyone to disperse, she has to sit alone in the dark and face the reality that her family is fracturing.
oh man, that reframes the entire scene for me. She isn't just being a demanding host.
No.
She is desperately trying to curate a flawless night to hold back the passage of time itself. And when physical demands, like forcing them to drink the hot wine, aren't enough to force the vibe she wants, she pivots.
Right, she moves to manipulating the sensory environment.
She decides to exert total aesthetic control over the party's soundtrack.
Yeah, she looks up at the mid-autumn moon, which is perfectly bright and centered in the sky, and determines that the atmosphere requires music.
Naturally.
But she is remarkably specific about the audio design. She explicitly orders that they do not use a full theatrical band.
Which would be the standard wealthy choice for a party of this scale, right?
Normally, yes. But she claims that too much music ruins the elegance of the moonlight.
So what does she want?
Instead, she orders a single flute to be played. And she specifically insists that the musician be placed far away, hidden entirely out of sight.
It's such a deliberate attempt to engineer a very specific melancholic beauty, like a curated aesthetic.
Very curated. But before the musician can even get into position, the unpredictable, messy reality of life violently pierces her carefully curated bubble.
Life always gets in the way.
Always. A servant rushes in to report that one of the older men, Jiashi, tripped over a stone on his way out in the dark and severely sprained his leg.
The juxtaposition there is just brilliant.
Yeah.
You have the matriarch trying to summon ethereal, distant flute music under a perfect moon.
And immediately,
An older man trips on a rock in the dark and injures himself.
reality crashing in. Grandmother Gia briefly panics and sends people away to check on him. The physical frailty of the aging body literally crashes into her pristine evening.
And then another family member, Madame Yu, insists on staying behind with the matriarch during this commotion.
Right. But her reason for staying adds just another layer of grim reality to the whole thing.
What does she say?
Madame Yu notes that she is older and technically still in mourning for her father-in-law.
Oh, wow.
So she tells Grandmother Gia she has no reason to rush home for a joyous family reunion anyway.
The illusion is completely cracking at this point. The reality of physical injury, aging, and the lingering shadow of death have all invited themselves to the party.
They're sitting right at the table.
So Grandmother Gia realizes physical presence isn't enough to force joy, so she leans even harder into her environmental control. The servant finally begins to play the distant flute under a sweet osmanthus tree.
And the text paints this incredibly vivid sensory picture here.
It really does. The air has turned cold, and the night dew is heavy.
Still trying to dictate the emotional tenor of the space, Grandmother Gia asks the unseen musician to play a slower tune.
Oh, bad deal.
The worst. This backfires in the most spectacular, devastating way possible.
Because by slowing the tempo and isolating that single instrument in the cold night air, the music becomes overwhelmingly desolate.
It becomes so mournful that Grandmother Gia herself, the woman who just forced her entire family to drink giant cups of wine to pretend they were having fun,
Right.
she actually breaks down in tears.
Oh, wow.
And because she dictates the emotional weather of the entire household, her tears drag the rest of the table down with her. Everyone falls into this shared, inescapable silence and grief.
The very tool she used to try and elevate the party is what ultimately destroys it.
Exactly.
I want to introduce a concept here that I think perfectly explains the mechanics of this scene. Let's call it the aesthetic vacuum.
Okay, I like that.
Think about the modern experience of leaving a deafening, crowded concert. You've been surrounded by flashing lights, screaming crowds, and heavy bass for hours.
Sensory overload.
Right. But then you get in your car to drive home, And instead of turning on the radio, you just sit in that profound, sudden silence.
Oh, yeah. And in that silence, you often feel an unexpected heavy wave of melancholy.
Exactly. You were just experiencing peak joy 10 minutes prior, but the sudden absence of noise creates a vacuum.
It strips away all your external distractions, forcing you to sit alone with your own baseline thoughts.
That's it. When you have a loud, chaotic band playing at a banquet, people tap their feet, they shout over the music, they clink their giant wine cups. The noise acts as a shield.
It protects them from their own thoughts.
Yes, so by isolating a single, slow flute and placing it far away in the dark, Grandmother Gia accidentally manufactured a massive aesthetic vacuum.
That is precisely how the scene functions. She stripped away the protective noise of the party.
Forcing herself and everyone at the table to confront the tragedy, the aging, and the isolation they had been drinking to ignore.
The quiet forced them to listen to their own internal anxieties. And Madame Yu realizes the entire family is sinking into this collective depression.
So she tries to intervene.
She does. She tries to throw them a lifeline. She attempts to break the tension by telling a joke.
But, calling it a joke is almost generous.
It really is.
It is one of the most bizarre, uncomfortable stories you could possibly tell in this specific moment.
Set it up for us.
So Madame Yu tells a story about a family that has 4 sons. The first son has only one eye. The second son has only one ear. The third has only one nostril.
Okay.
And the fourth son has all his facial features perfectly intact, but he is totally mute.
Yeah, it lands with a heavy, agonizing thud in the room. We really have to unpack the mechanism of why this joke is so profoundly unsettling.
Please do.
She is telling a story about a deeply fractured, defective family to a family that is secretly terrified of its own fracturing and defects.
The punchline about the mute son is the most damning part, isn't it?
Absolutely. The fourth son looks perfect on the outside, but he completely lacks the ability to speak.
That is the Gia family in a nutshell.
Bingo. They are sitting in this opulent, perfectly decorated pavilion, looking flawlessly wealthy on the outside.
But inside,
But they are entirely incapable of voicing their own fears about their decline.
wow. The resonance is just too close to home. The joke doesn't alleviate the tension at all. It holds a grotesque mirror up to it.
Grandmother Gia has literally closed her eyes and fallen asleep.
Wait, really? She just falls asleep.
She does. She cannot bear to engage with the metaphor, so she chooses physical unconsciousness to escape the discomfort of the moment.
That is amazing. The heavy emotional weight of that aesthetic vacuum completely crushes the older generation. Grandmother Gia gets into her little bamboo chair and is carried away to bed, and the older women finally disperse.
But this same crushing weight has a totally different effect on the younger generation.
Right, it doesn't put them to sleep.
Not at all.
Okay.
It alienates them so deeply that it pushes them to physically abandon the party and seek out their own space to rebel.
And the transition the text uses to move us from the elders to the youth is wonderfully grounded here.
It is so jarring, in a good way.
Right after the matriarch is carried off in tears, we get a scene of the household servants frantically bickering in the moonlight because they can't find a missing teacup.
I love that part. One servant is terrified they will be accused of stealing it or breaking it.
So the grand, sweeping, existential melancholy of the aristocratic masters is instantly followed by the working class just trying to manage the dish inventory so they don't get punished.
It snaps the reader right back to reality.
It really does. But as the servants are searching the grounds for this teacup, 2 of the younger women, Daiyu and Xiangyun,
While the rest of the exhausted household has finally gone to sleep, these 2 absolutely refuse to.
they are wide awake.
Daiyu has been crying quietly in the dark.
But she isn't crying because of the mournful flute. Her grief is highly specific.
Right, it's not the existential dread of the older generation.
No, she was triggered by Grandmother Gia's earlier complaints about the missing family members, specifically the absence of her friend, Bao Chai.
Right, Bai Chai had made a promise.
Yes, during this mid-autumn festival, the girls were going to start a poetry club and write linked verses together. But instead, Bao Chai went home to her own family, breaking the promise.
Leaving Daiyu feeling entirely abandoned in this massive estate.
So Xianyan steps in to comfort her, but she doesn't do it with, soft sympathy.
No, she does it with a fiercely independent, almost aggressive energy. She quotes a song emperor saying, "How can one allow others to sleep soundly beside one's own bed?"
Which is originally a quote about ruthless territorial dominance and military expansion.
Yes. But Xiangyun is applying it to their creative, intellectual space.
I love that.
Yeah.
She tells Daiyu, They are not going to sit around and wallow in abandonment.
Nope.
Instead, they're going to stay up all night and write brilliant, linked poetry, just the two of them, specifically to shame the others who left them behind.
They are weaponizing their isolation.
It is a wonderfully petty, brilliant teenage rebellion. Like, you didn't want to write poetry with us. Fine, we're going to create a masterpiece without you.
Exactly. But to execute this rebellion, they realize they cannot stay in the remnants of the banquet. They need to find the right physical space.
And the geographical choice they make is deeply structurally symbolic.
To move through the vast gardens, and the text highlights a deliberate choice between two beautifully named buildings.
Right, they can go up the mountain to the Tubi Hall,
Which translates to the convex Emerald Hall,
or they can travel down into the valley, by the water, to the Aojing Hall.
the concave Crystal Hall.
They bypass the mountain entirely and choose the concave Crystal Hall, settling down by the dark, rippling water.
And the text spends a surprising amount of time discussing the actual words used for these buildings.
Yeah, the Chinese characters for convex, which is tu,
Yes.
and concave, which is of Ao.
Right, and they are visually striking. They are highly unusual characters because they're almost purely topographical drawings.
What do you mean by that?
Well, 2 looks like a solid block with a piece boldly sticking up out of the top,
Okay.
and a KO looks like a block with a piece carved out of the middle, forming a basin or a hollow.
That's fascinating.
Historically, people thought these words were vulgar or far too bizarre to use as names for elegant aristocratic pavilions.
But Daiyu reveals a massive piece of backstory right here in the dark. She tells Yan Yun that she was the one who named these buildings. She deliberately chose those rare, ancient, topographical words over common, flowery language. She actively defended her choices against critics who thought they sounded strange.
Because ancient poets and painters used them to capture the raw shape of the earth.
Exactly. And the adults in the family were so impressed they actually kept her names.
This is a profound moment of reclamation. Let's look at the spatial metaphor here.
Let's do it.
The convex hall, the Tubi Hall, sits up on the mountain. It bulges outward. It projects itself onto the landscape, demanding to be seen.
Convex spaces are like an acoustic megaphone. They broadcast your presence to the world. It perfectly represents the extroverted, loud, forced public joy of the banquet they just escaped.
Right. Grandmother Gia was forcing everyone to be convex.
Yes, but the concave hall down in the valley by the water is entirely different. It pulls inward. It is a basin designed to hold things.
Concave spaces are like an acoustic dish, turning the sound inward so you can finally hear yourself think.
So Daiyu and Xiangyan choosing the concave hall isn't just them looking for a dark place to hide from the servants.
Not at all. They are actively reclaiming their agency in a space Daiyu literally defined with her own intellect.
They're using the architecture to process their emotions. The forced party demanded they project an illusion of happiness. But they needed a concave space to catch their grief, hold it, and transform it into something meaningful.
Which, in their case, is writing poetry. They found empowerment in the concave moments of life.
The architecture of the garden completely mirrors their internal emotional landscape.
When the forced festivity of the high ground fails them, and the aesthetic vacuum of the flute crushes the older generation.
The youth find refuge and creative power in the low ground near the water, in the shadows. They take the raw material of their melancholy and forge it into art. They are at the secluded spot called the Concave Crystal House.
Concave Crystal House sounds fancy.
It does, but the architectural notes point out something really interesting. It's chosen specifically because it sits low. It's geographically depressed right near the water's edge.
Oh, so it's physically restricting them in a way.
Exactly. It forces their perspective downward toward the water rather than up at the sweeping views.
Which is such a funny contrast to what's going on around them because there's a massive mid-autumn festival party happening elsewhere on the estate.
Right. The adult world is totally distracted.
Yeah. And the 2 old women who are supposed to be on night watch guarding the girls, they've completely abandoned ship. They got totally drunk on reward wine, ate a bunch of premium mooncakes, and literally just passed out.
I love that detail. It creates this temporary pocket universe for the girls. The suffocating adult supervision is literally asleep,
leaving them completely alone under the awning. And the text paints this gorgeous picture, right? There's a perfect moon in the sky, and its reflection is shimmering in the rippling water right below them.
Yeah, they say it feels like they're sitting inside a crystal palace.
It sounds so perfect. You'd expect them to just, be completely content and enjoy the freedom.
You would think so. But human nature kicks in almost immediately.
It really does. Because they get into this surprisingly modern debate about, well, satisfaction. Jemyun looks out at the water and is like, I wish we were on a boat.
Right, she complains about just sitting by the water.
Yeah, she claims that if she were at her own home, she'd have already taken a boat out. And I have to push back here reading this today. I mean, they are sitting in this gorgeous crystal-like setting, eating delicacies, and she's complaining about not having a private boat.
It's a bit much, isn't it?
It sounds like a classic case of rich kid entitlement, like textbook elite complaining.
On the surface, yeah, it totally
Yeah.
sounds like a spoiled aristocrat just, wanting more. But we have to look at how Daiyu untacks this, because Shang Yun herself realizes the irony.
Right. She brings up an old idiom, doesn't she?
She does. She talks about how human desire is basically a moving goalpost. She notes that poor families look at rich families and think, oh, they have everything they could possibly want.
But unless you actually experience it, you don't get it.
Exactly. You don't realize that even the wealthy have these deep, unfulfilled desires.
Mm-hmm.
And Daiyu quotes this proverb. She says, if everything were perfect, where would the joy be?
Oh, wow. So she's saying the friction of imperfection is what gives happiness its meaning.
Yes. And that philosophical exchange reveals the core reality of their situation. Because remember, both of these girls are orphans.
Right. They have aristocratic blood, but they don't actually have any money or power of their own.
Exactly. They are permanent guests in this massive wealthy household. They depend entirely on the charity of the matriarch. So Jiang Yun complaining about the boat isn't really about a boat. It's about a lack of agency.
That makes so much sense. And Daiyu kind of expands on that, right? She points out that literally everyone in the house has things that don't go their way.
Yeah, from the grandmother at the very top of the hierarchy down to the golden boy, Daiyu, and Tanshan. They all face restrictions, regardless of their money.
So Daiyu is basically saying, if the people who actually own everything are trapped, then we are really trapped.
Which is a pretty heavy realization to have in the middle of the night. And Jiang Yun notices that Daiyu is starting to spiral.
She's getting really sad and melancholic about their whole orphan situation.
Right. So Shang Yun realizes she has to pivot fast. She tells Daiyu to stop talking about depressing things.
Like, let's change the subject before we both start crying.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And she hears this distant, melodious flute music coming from the main party, and she uses it to challenge Daiyu. She suggests they compose linked poetry together.
Which instantly works. They decide to turn this shared sadness into this highly competitive, creative game. But what blows my mind is how they choose the rules of the game.
They don't make it easy on themselves.
Not at all. Instead of just picking a topic, they literally walk over to the railing and count the wooden posts from one end of the pavilion to the other to determine their rhyme scheme.
It's letting pure chance dictate their artistic boundaries.
I was comparing this in my head to, like, a modern rapper doing a freestyle, right?
Yeah.
Asking the audience to throw out a totally random, difficult word to build a whole rap around.
That's a great analogy.
And they count exactly 13 posts, which locks them into the 13 yuan rhyme scheme.
Which is notoriously brutal.
Right. Can you explain the mechanics of why that's so hard? Because it's not just like finding a rhyme for the word orange in English.
No, it's a systemic constraint. In classical Chinese poetry, these official dictionaries codified centuries earlier, during the Tang and Song dynasties, grouped words based on very precise vowel sounds and final consonants.
So it's a very strict historical list of words.
Exactly. And the 13 yuan category is extremely narrow. There are very few words in it. But the real kicker is that pronunciation had changed over the centuries.
Oh, right. This novel is set during the Qing dynasty.
Yes. So by their time, many of the characters in that specific category didn't even sound like they rhymed anymore in everyday speech.
Wait, really? So how do you even play the game?
You literally had to have the ancient phonetic tables memorized in your head.
That is insane. They are fighting against the natural evolution of their own language, just for fun, in the middle of the night.
And that's just the rhyme. They are also doing linked verse.
Which means one person starts a line, and the other person has to match it and add a new one, going back and forth.
But the matching has to be structurally perfect. If the first person ends with a noun about the sky, the next person has to end with a noun about the earth. A verb of motion matches a verb of motion. A color matches a color.
So you're playing offense and defense at the same exact time.
Constantly. It's an incredible intellectual pressure cooker.
And the banter between them during this is so funny. They start off describing the party scenes, like dice and passing flowers and wine.
The trash talk is very elegant. but it's fierce.
It really is. Like, when Xiangyun uses the phrase sharing melons, Daiyu immediately calls a foul. She literally accuses her of making up fake slang just to trap her.
Xiangyun actually has to defend her historical citation on the spot.
And then later the roles reverse. Xiangyun complains that Daiyu took the easy way out by using the phrase golden daylily.
Right. She accuses Daiyu of just stringing together rich, fancy vocabulary to stall for time.
Because they are rapidly burning through all the easy rhyming words, which leads to this crazy moment of intellectual flexing.
Yes, the obscure tree.
Right. Xiangyun is pacing around, she's visibly struggling to find a rhyme, and then she proudly drops a line ending with the character Hun.
And Daiyu is genuinely impressed. She cheers and calls Xiangyun a mischievous ghost for hiding such an obscure word.
Because Hun refers to the night-closing tree, right?
Exactly. It's a specific botanical reference to a tree whose leaves fold up in the evening, so it fits the nighttime setting perfectly, and it saves the rhyme scheme.
It's a massive flex. But then Xiangyun admits something fascinating about it.
She does. She confesses she actually had to double-check that character in an ancient anthology the day before, just to make sure of the meaning.
But she adds that Sister Bao, another character in the house, already knew the word without even needing to look it up.
Which says so much about the baseline standard of intellect in this family. Even when you win, the hierarchy of knowledge is just looming over you.
Like, you have to read ancient botanical dictionaries in your spare time just to keep up.
Right, and as they get deeper into this game, the night gets quieter. The distant party sounds fade away.
The poetry starts getting way more intricate and personal. The superficial party tropes drop away.
The structural restrictions of the game act like a centrifuge, forcing their subconscious anxiety to the surface. And just as the creative tension reaches its absolute peak,
The real world crashes in.
literally,
It's such a jarring scare. Daiyu suddenly spots this dark, human-like shadow moving in the pond.
and she genuinely thinks it's a ghost.
Which makes sense. They've isolated themselves, the game is super intense, they're primed for panic.
But Xiangyun, who always plays up this bold, tomboyish persona, declares she isn't afraid of ghosts at all,
So she just picks up a stone and throws it right at the shadow.
which breaks the illusion of the Crystal Palace completely.
Hmm.
The stone hits the water, the moon's reflection shatters into ripples.
And suddenly, with this terrifying loud squawk, a massive white crane erupts out of the shadows.
It flies right up toward the Lotus Pavilion. They had totally forgotten about the pet cranes wandering around the estate.
The adrenaline of that moment would ruin most people's focus. I'd be done with the game.
But Xiangyun weaponizes it immediately. She takes this real-life shock and channels it directly into the poetry game.
She delivers this stunning line, "Cold pond crossed by crane shadow."
Which is universally considered the masterpiece line of the battle.
It's so good. Cold pond crossed by crane shadow. It captures the physical chill, the sudden violence of the movement, the visual, the white crane against the dark water, and she still hits the impossible 13 yuan rhyme.
Daiyu's reaction says it all. She is absolutely floored. She's stomping her feet in praise.
She literally says it's perfectly natural and fresh. She wants to put her pen down and quit.
She actually surrenders. And Xiangyun graciously offers to let her sleep on it and finish the poem tomorrow.
But Daiyu doesn't actually quit. She just stands there in silence, staring up at the sky, ignoring Xiangyun's teasing.
You can almost feel her mental calculus. How do you possibly recover from a line that good?
She has to find something in the universe that can balance a cold pond and a crane shadow. And then she delivers her mic drop.
Cold moon buries flower soul.
Cold moon buries flower soul. I mean, wow. The parallelism is just breathtaking.
Let's break down the mechanics of why it works so perfectly.
Yeah.
Xiangyun uses the word cold, so Daiyu mirrors it with cold.
Xiangyun uses pond, the water, the earth below. So Daiyu counters with moon, the sky, the ethereal above.
Exactly, and the verbs are where the real emotional shift happens. Xiangyun uses crossed, which is a verb of temporary transit.
Right, the crane is just passing through.
But Daiyu counters with buries, a verb of absolute, inescapable finality, death.
And then the final image. Xiangyun's crane shadow is an animal, a fleeting visual. But Daiyu's flower soul is deeply personal. It's her botanical motif throughout the whole novel, and it's entirely metaphysical.
Cold moon buries flower soul. Xiangyun actually claps her hands in praise. She admits it's the only possible match. Daiyu won.
But the victory is so short-lived because Xiangyun immediately follows up with a pretty intense warning, right?
She does. She steps out of the competitor role and becomes a caretaker. She tells Daiyu that while the line is incredibly innovative, it's way too decadent.
Like, it's too eerie and melancholy.
Yes. She reminds Daiyu that she's currently sick. And writing these strangely chilling verses, focusing on buried souls and cold moons, is actually dangerous for her well-being.
But Daiyu just laughs it off. She claims she only said it to beat Zhang Yun, like it was just a competitive reflex.
Which is clearly a defensive deflection.
Oh, totally. The restriction of the game, the insane rules of the 13 yuan rhyme, and the forced parallelism, it forced her to dig so deep into her own psyche that she basically pulled out her core existential dread.
The very game they started as a distraction from their sadness became the ultimate vehicle for expressing it.
It's like they couldn't escape it.
Reading this text, it's impossible not to think about what it actually feels like to be awake at 3 a.m.
Yeah, just staring at the ceiling.
Or lying in bed, maybe furiously writing in a journal, and you just get totally stuck in this negative, melancholic loop.
Down the rabbit hole.
Exactly. Everything feels heavy, and you don't even realize how deep in the hole you are until something or, someone snaps you out of it.
And to fully appreciate the weight of this particular interruption, we really have to look at the environment these characters are in.
Set the scene for us a bit more.
So Daiyu and Xiangyun are living inside Prospect Garden, which is this massive enclosed sanctuary. It belongs to the aristocratic Jia family. It's basically a world unto itself.
Right. It's incredibly luxurious.
It is.
Yeah.
But lingering over all this vast wealth is this subtle kind of creeping shadow of the family's impending decline.
Like they know the good times aren't going to last forever.
Exactly. And these are highly educated, profoundly sensitive teenagers.
Right.
They are acutely aware of the fragility of their world.
So when they're sitting by the pool, they're feeling all of that weight.
Yeah. When they sit down to write, they aren't just casually rhyming.
Right.
They're playing a high-wire intellectual game called Lianju.
Lianju, or linked verse.
Yes, linked verse. One person sets a rhyme and a theme.
Okay.
And then the next person has to flawlessly match that rhyme, bait on the imagery, and then propose the next structural challenge.
I mean, that takes just an insane amount of brain power.
It really does.
You're constantly trying to outdo the other person's cleverness on the spot.
While adhering to incredibly strict poetic rules.
Right. And that brings us to the mysterious figure stepping out from the rocks to stop them.
Miao Yu.
Miao Yu. So tell us about her.
She is a nun from the garden's hermitage, but she occupies a really unique space.
How so?
Because she is an aristocrat who took vows, so she operates slightly outside the strict hierarchy of the household.
Got it. So she has a bit more freedom to just, intervene.
Exactly. And when she interrupts them, she doesn't just tell them to keep the noise down.
Right, like a security guard or something.
No. She actually praises their technical brilliance first. She acknowledges that the poetry is structurally magnificent. But then she issues a really severe warning.
Yeah, she says the verses have become, what was the translation? Too sad and desolate.
Yes. The phrasing in the original text points to something being overly ruined, decadent, or just deeply sorrowful.
Because they've really been pushing it.
They have. Miao Yu has been listening to them push each other further and further into the dark.
We actually see the climax of their duel right before she steps out.
We do. Jian Yun delivers this chilling line about a cold pond passing a crane's shadow.
Oh, wow.
And then Daiyu responds by matching it with just a devastating image.
What does she say?
A cold moon burying a flower's soul.
Burying a flower's soul. That is incredibly dark.
It is. They are conjuring ghosts, dead lotuses, buried spirits.
Just pure emo teenage poetry.
Essentially, yes. But Miao Yu warns them that continuing down this specific creative path is incredibly dangerous.
Why dangerous?
Because forcing these increasingly tragic rhymes just to keep the game going, she claims this level of manufactured sorrow directly relates to one's destiny.
Like to their fate.
Yes, to their actual life trajectory.
Okay, wait, I have to stop you there because this sounds a lot like 18th century censorship.
I can see why you'd say that.
Right. Is Miao Yu just acting as the morality police here? Like, is she telling these brilliant teenage girls that their art is too dark and they just need to, smile more?
Just write pretty things so you don't jinx yourselves.
Exactly. Like, is it really just about not jinxing it?
It is very easy to read it that way through a modern lens.
Yeah.
But if we look at the mechanics of what Miao Yu is actually doing, she is giving them a masterclass in emotional regulation.
Oh, interesting. How so?
She's warning them about the self-fulfilling prophecy of despair. Words have biological and psychological power.
Right. The whole what you focus on grows idea.
Exactly. The linguistic environment you build for yourself locks you into a physical state.
Wow.
If you spend the entire night reaching into the absolute depths of your mind to find the most tragic, lonely imagery possible.
Like burying flower souls under a cold moon.
Yes. Your brain and your body are going to start believing that this is your permanent reality.
Okay, this makes perfect sense. It's basically the 18th century equivalent of algorithmic doom scrolling.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right. Because if you keep feeding your brain depressing videos or news articles at 2 a.m., your algorithm adapts.
It learns what you're lingering on.
Yeah, and it starts serving you nothing but tragedy. And suddenly, your entire perception of reality is warped, and you just feel like the world is ending.
You're trapped in that loop.
Exactly. Miao Yu is pointing out that if you intentionally feed yourself depressing words, you literally train your brain to only see a dark destiny.
And notice how she breaks that algorithm for them.
She doesn't just argue with them about the poetry.
No, she doesn't offer some high-minded philosophical counterargument. She snaps them back to tangible, physical reality.
She brings them back down to earth.
Yes. She points out that the older women of the household have already dispersed. The garden is completely asleep.
Right.
Their maids are probably running around the grounds in an absolute panic trying to find them.
Oh, true. They've just been sitting out there for hours.
And most practically, she asks if they are afraid of catching a cold sitting by the water.
Which is such a grounded mom thing to say.
But it works. When someone is caught in an anxiety spiral or a depressive loop, arguing with the logic of their thoughts often just fails.
You can't outthink an overthinking brain.
Precisely. You have to change their physical reality.
Oh, wow.
She reminds them of the cold air on their skin, the social reality of their worried maids.
She gives them a reality check.
And then, crucially, she offers an immediate sanctuary. She invites them to her hermitage for tea.
So she physically extracts them from the cold, dark pool where they were, spiraled
She
out.
completely changes their environment.
Which initiates the next phase of the text.
Yeah.
They actually follow Miao Yu to her home, the Greenbower Hermitage.
And the text gives us this incredible sensory shift here.
It really does. We go from the freezing, vast, desolate moonlight outside
To the intimate interior of the hermitage.
Right. There's a blue flame still burning in the shrine. The incense hasn't burned out yet.
There are dozing maids in the background.
It's warm, it's enclosed, it's safe.
It basically functions as a womb-like environment.
Wow, yeah.
The stark contrast to the vast, cold emptiness of the pool is completely deliberate by the author.
And almost as soon as they get settled into this warmth, the physical world kind of crashes in again.
There's a knock at the door.
The search party.
Finally. The maids, Zihuan and Quilu, along with several older servants, have tracked them down.
Because they'd been searching the entire garden in a panic.
And they only found them because some night watchmen heard voices near the water and tipped them off.
So the spell of the midnight poetry battle is officially broken by the real world.
Absolutely.
But Miao Yu doesn't just, pour them tea and send them to bed. This is where she asserts her own creative authority in this really fascinating way.
She essentially takes over the game.
Yeah, she gets out her brush and ink, makes Daiyu and Jiangyuan recite the 22 rhymes they had come up with so far,
She documents all their dark work.
and writes them all down.
Yeah.
And then, using this classic self-deprecating idiom, she announces she is going to add a dog's tail to a sable to finish the poem.
Which is such a great phrase.
It is. Wait,
is.
explain that idiom for us. What does adding a dog's tail to a sable actually mean?
Well, it's a polite convention.
Okay.
It essentially means your work is the beautiful, rare sable fur, and my addition is just a cheap dog's tail.
So she's pretending to be humble.
Exactly. False modesty. Because beneath that, Miao Yu has a highly specific poetic and psychological philosophy that she intends to demonstrate.
She has a point to make.
A major point. She tells them that to properly finish this poem, they must return to their original face.
The original face.
Yes, or their true nature.
Okay.
She argues that if they continue to relentlessly hunt for bizarre, tragic, or terrifying imagery, they lose their identity.
They lose who they really are.
Right. They lose what she calls their boudoir face, meaning their true identity as young aristocratic maidens.
Okay, boudoir face. Again, my modern brain immediately throws up a red flag here.
I'm not surprised.
Because that sounds incredibly restrictive. It sounds like she's basically saying, stay in your lane. You are young ladies of the inner chambers. You shouldn't be writing about ghosts and death.
It does sound like gatekeeping.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Is there more to this concept than just, societal conditioning?
Oh, there is immense cultural and historical weight to the concept of the boudoir. in 18th century Chinese literature.
Okay, break that down for us.
It wasn't just a physical room. It represented a state of inner refinement, balance, and quiet observation.
So it's more of a psychological space.
Exactly. Miaoyu isn't telling them to be superficial. She is telling them they have lost their center of gravity. By adopting the persona of wandering, desolate exiles just to win a rhyme game?
Which they are not.
Right. They are abandoning their own authentic experiences.
That makes a lot of sense.
True artistic mastery, according to Miaoyu, doesn't require destroying your own psychological foundation just to sound profound or edgy.
You don't have to torture yourself to make good art.
Precisely.
And you really see that in how she actually alters the poem. She takes the pen and completely flips the script.
The tonal shift is incredible.
It really is. It's like Daiyu and Jiang Yun were writing this suffocating psychological thriller, and then Miaoyu steps in and turns the final act into a peaceful Studio Ghibli movie.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
Because she doesn't erase their 22 rhymes of sorrow, right? She leaves them there.
She acknowledges the darkness.
But then she adds 13 brand new rhymes of her own, bringing the total to 35.
And look closely at the specific imagery she introduces in those 13 lines.
Right.
She brings in the dawn breaking.
Which is physically happening in the real world, too.
Exactly. She writes about 1,000 birds waking up in the forest, an ape crying in the valley.
Wow.
She introduces the sound of the morning bell ringing at the Greenbower Temple, the roosters crowing over at Rice Sweet Village.
So she's bringing sound and life back into the picture.
Yes. She moves the poem from isolation to community, from silence to the sounds of morning, from darkness to light.
She literally writes the sunrise into the poem.
She does.
And she concludes it by describing the simple, grounding joy of brewing tea and having a refined conversation as the night ends.
Bringing it back to the present moment.
Right. And Daiyu and Jiang Yun read her ending, and they are just completely floored.
They are amazed.
They call Miaoyu a poetry immortal.
Because they realize that compared to her ability to command the emotional landscape of the poem,
They were just amateurs.
they call themselves armchair strategists talking on paper.
Wow.
They knew how to play with sorrow, but they had absolutely no idea how to resolve it.
That is such a powerful realization.
It illustrates a profound lesson about synthesis.
Right.
Miaoyu's concept of returning to the true nature is really about achieving balance.
Okay, balance.
Daiyu and Xianyun got trapped in the yin, essentially. The dark, the cold, the passive, the sorrowful.
Right.
Miaoyu introduces the yang, the light, the warmth, the active dawn.
She balances the scales.
She synthesizes both the dark night and the coming day, offering the reader, really, a blueprint for emotional regulation through art.
Which is?
You acknowledge the darkness, as she did, by keeping their 22 lines.
Right, you don't delete the hard feeling.
Exactly, but you actively, deliberately write your way back to the light.
I love that. It feels like this incredible moment of literary and spiritual resolution.
It's very cathartic.
The crisis is averted, the masterpiece is finished, but, and this is a massive shift in the text, the sun is actually coming up now.
The magic of the night is officially over.
Yeah. And as the girls finally leave the hermitage to get some rest, we are slammed right back into the inescapable, punishing reality of the physical body.
We move instantly from the transcendent realm of immortal poetry back to the fragile, failing human form.
It's quite a tonal whiplash.
It is. Xianyun decides she doesn't want to make the long trek back to her own quarters.
Right, she doesn't want to risk waking up her whole household.
So she goes with Daiyu to her residence, Yaksang Manor.
Makes sense.
They go inside, wash up, get undressed, and finally get into bed.
But neither of them can sleep.
The poetry is resolved, but their nervous systems are completely frayed.
Right, they've been up all night.
They just lie there, tossing and turning.
The text mentions Yang Yin suffers from bed-picking disease.
Yes, which basically translates to situational insomnia.
Caused by sleeping in a new or unfamiliar bed.
Exactly. Add to that the fact that she is massively overtired.
We've all been there. You miss your sleep window, your cortisol spikes, and suddenly your brain just refuses to shut down no matter how exhausted your muscles are.
It's miserable. But Xiangyun's insomnia is situational. It's temporary.
Right.
But then we get to Daiyu.
Yeah.
As they lie awake in the dark, Daiyu makes a confession to Xiangyun that completely shifts our understanding of everything we just read.
She admits that her lack of sleep has nothing to do with tonight's poetry battle,
No.
or the unfamiliar bed, or the late hour.
None of that.
She confesses that, due to her chronic illness, she struggles with severe, unrelenting insomnia. Like, she explicitly states that in a whole year, she only gets a full night of sleep, about 10 nights total.
10 nights.
10 nights of restorative sleep in an entire year.
It's almost unimaginable. And to understand the gravity of that, we have to look at the mechanisms of Daiyu's illness through the lens of traditional Chinese medicine.
Because that deeply informs the world of this novel.
Completely. The text frequently describes Daiyu as having a severe blood deficiency.
Okay, wait. How does a blood deficiency translate to not sleeping for 350 days a year?
Well, in traditional Chinese medicine, blood does much more than just nourish the physical organs.
Okay.
It is actually the physical anchor for the shen.
The shen.
Yes, which translates roughly to the mind or the spirit.
Interesting.
During the day, the shen is active, allowing you to think, create, interact.
Right.
But at night, the shen is supposed to return to the heart and be anchored by the blood so you can sleep deeply. If a person has a severe blood deficiency, the shen has nowhere to rest. It floats.
It floats.
Yes. And the result of a floating shen is severe insomnia, racing thoughts, night sweats, palpitations.
Wow. So her spirit literally cannot settle into her body.
That's exactly right.
That is just devastating.
It is. It casts a completely different light on the poetry.
Right. Because we just spent all this time marveling at their poetic genius,
Yeah.
analyzing their rhymes, and talking about how romantic and high-minded it was to be writing verses by a moonlit pool.
We called them poetry immortals.
Exactly.
Mm.
But Daiyu only gets 10 good nights of sleep a year.
Yeah.
Doesn't this completely shatter the romantic illusion of the tortured poetic genius?
It absolutely shatters the romantic illusion, but I think it vastly deepens the humanity and the tragedy of the text.
How so?
Because this biological reality directly connects back to the dark poetry they were writing at the beginning.
Oh, wow.
Remember Miaoyu's warning about their destiny?
Yes, how the sorrowful words would lock them into a dark fate.
Miaoyu was completely right to be alarmed. That intense, desolate poetry wasn't just an artistic exercise in finding cool, edgy metaphors.
It wasn't just a game.
No, it was a direct manifestation of deep, chronic, physical and mental depletion.
So her poetry was literally a symptom of her insomnia.
Yes.
Because when you are running on 10 nights of sleep a year, your brain simply does not have the biological resources to conjure optimism.
You're running on empty.
You write about buried souls and cold ponds because your body is existing in a state of constant, exhausting decay.
Precisely, and this is really where the absolute genius of the author shines.
Yeah.
The text brilliantly juxtaposes high literary achievement.
Like the flawless 35 rhyme-linked verse.
Yes. It juxtaposes that achievement with profound human vulnerability.
Wow.
They are undisputed literary geniuses, capable of mental gymnastics that astound even the adults around them.
Right. They are brilliant.
But underneath the intellect, they are sick, exhausted teenagers who just want to be able to close their eyes and rest.
That is so heartbreaking.
The immortal poetry is inextricably, tragically linked to their fragile, suffering mortal bodies.